Okay. Let me ask, actually, since it's the first time I gave a JSONic lecture in this way, how do you think I should change this for next year? Should I make it slightly longer and elaborate a bit more into the details? Should I not change anything? Should I just give the readings in front of it? Should I give more incentive to use the tutorial before? So what do you think? Let's do a poll again. Who thinks I should push even more to do the tutorial in front of the lecture? Okay, if you raise hands. Who thinks I should make it a bit longer and take more time to elaborate in the details? Okay, who thinks I should not change it? Okay, so if you raise hands. What are the other options? Who thinks I should stop talking about this? Yeah, well, it's kind of the future, so I have to prepare you to the future of data lake houses. All right. Okay, so that gives me globally an impression, because every year I'm adapting and constantly adapting the course. Okay. So as I told you, so welcome back. As I told you, we've been focusing on tables and trees, and now at the end of the semester, it's not projecting. Just realized that now. Well, the people on Zoom see it, but in the lecture hall, they are just looking at trees. And since I'm moving to graphs, you should no longer see trees. You should see graphs. Yeah. So yes, graphs. That's what we're looking at right now. So why graph databases? Why do we have that in the first place? Why don't we just use tables or trees, which work well? So here's the intuition that I want to give you. So the graphs, they appeared 20 years ago. There was this NoSQL revolution that was the infancy of big data. Back then, what you would see on the McKinsey and BCG and all of these consultancy slides is these big four things. You would see the brand new key value stores that everybody wanted. It was the blockchain of the times. You would have the white column stores, HBase, Bigtable, and so on. You would have the document stores, MongoDB that we saw last week. And you would have the triple stores or the graphs in general. And that was the four big emerging technologies of the time. So graphs are already 20 years old. Here's the idea. You know you can store data in tables. You could even store genealogy in tables, right? You have a table of people, and then you store the parents and the children and so on. So you can do a whole genealogy tree in this way. You know about the normal forms, right? So the normal forms in the traditional database systems, they tell you you should have plenty of tables. Every table does one thing, and then you join these tables together when you want to analyze them. So you know how to do joins, right? With SQL in the from clause, you do a join and so on. So imagine you want to join this. That's going to be computationally intensive. We know how to optimize the joins a little bit. So for example, if you join on an equality predicate, then we know how to use hash tables to do that. Who has already seen that or has an intuition of how we could do joins with hash tables? Many of you, right? It's also taught classically in universities. So we can use a hash table if it's an equality predicate. If it's not an equality predicate, then you can't. Then it's going to be even more involved. But still, even a hash table, it has a constant factor, right? Even if it's O of 1, you still need to build it, and that's basically a very big structure. So you will need to join a lot of data on top of a cluster. Even with hash tables, it can be expensive. So I would even claim that even though joins are at the core of the relational algebra, the relational model is inefficient, or let's be more precise. The physical implementations of the relational model are inefficient at relationship traversal. And you will understand in a second why I'm saying that, because it seems that it's very efficient because we optimize the joins and so on. We can, in fact, do better than that. But what I would like you to see is that there will be cases that are not going to be covered because they will be slow with this. So can we get rid of the joins then? How do we get rid of the joins? Exactly. So we store the pre-joined tables. There's a name for that. What do? We denormalize. Exactly. So that's exactly what you said. We indeed pre-compute the join and we denormalize. That's why I told you we throw the normal forms to the garbage and we just go all the way, not even in the first normal form. You might even join so much that you are even looking at nested tables. So that's an intuition that I probably gave you during the semester. So we can avoid, if we know in advance what joins these are, we can just get rid of them by removing the normal forms. What do we get if we do normalize tables? We get trees, exactly. Now you have the automatic answers, very good. The problem is that this also has limits, because when you do that, you have to know in advance which joins you optimize and then denormalize accordingly. The problem is that there might be many more ways people would want to join, and maybe the way people would want to join does not correspond to the way you denormalized, right? And then you're back to square one. You still need to do a join. It can be done, of course. You can do joins on Spark and also on JSONic on top of Spark, but it has limits because you might have people that are going to want to not do just one join, but maybe 2 joins, 3 joins, 5 joins, 10 joins, or even 100 joins, right? Imagine people that are actually trying to do graph algorithms on top of SQL, right? There are people who are trying to do that, right? Do you see that if you try to traverse a graph, Dijkstra and all these algorithms on top of a SQL database, this is going to be super expensive because it's a join every time you cross an edge, right? Who sees that? Right? So we need to have something better. And that something better you will see after the break, in 15 minutes.